A confident voice, quick wit, and a skillful tongue could get you many things in life. Men, Rio, tax exemptions. But right now I'd settle for longevity. I had to make sure my 4.5-foot partner was on the same page. If we run into any guards, let me do the talking. My mind started running through a few excuses that might fool your typical city watchman. It wasn't coming up with much. If worse came to worst, I could always try to grease a few palms, but in such a wealthy community, I'd need a lot of grease. Masashi brushed away some hair that had escaped his ponytail. In doing so, he revealed a pair of eyes that gave me a stern glare. His cheeks puffed out as well, a childish but incredibly cute habit.
Talk! Thus far I've only bore witness to your tendency towards violence.
The Shugenja placed his hands atop his hips and stopped following me. The kid's frustration gave way to an idea. One of his better ones.
It's obvious to me that we have matters to discuss. This establishment across the street, with the posters on display. It should be deserted this time of night.
I followed Masashi's eyes to a series of large illustrations hung over an odd wooden building. The illustrations showed ridiculous-looking men and women in white face paint and impossibly colorful kimonos. Me and my orange haori should fit right in. The front entrance was unlocked and slid right open. Hyugan doors were impossible to secure from the outside. The best you could do was place a bar from the inside to prevent the frame from sliding altogether. Most folk from safer communities didn't even bother, which certainly made my assassinations easier. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it sure wasn't this. Balconies overlooked a series of raised walkways, which mingled in and around seating areas covered in luxurious rugs and pillows. The walkways joined towards the end of the chamber, where some sort of miniature shrine stood in extravagance. It lacked any walls and any purpose, from what I could tell. My puzzlement did not go unnoticed.
Care to speculate, Tetsuo?
I knew Masashi was grinning like a childish devil without even looking. Since our 2 weeks of traveling together, he's made it a habit to boast his trivial knowledge whenever at all possible. Sometimes I could get lucky on a hunch. Probably not this time, though. It's a waste of money, whatever it is. I didn't want to give the kid the pleasure of flaunting his mountain of useless knowledge. This place reeked of perfume from fattened nobility, which was evidence enough that it was a waste of both time and money, both of which I needed much more of. Masashi's lecture began without warning, with more enthusiasm than I expected.
This is a kabuki theater, stylistic dance drama in its purest form, genius choreography depicting historic battles and romance, warring families and forbidden love, legends that speak to the spirits themselves.
His passion bled through his words. Masashi continued on about particular actors and plays he had seen, the masks they wore and methods they used. I tuned him out and returned to my own thoughts. Apparently scrolls weren't the only thing this Shugenja obsessed over. It must be nice to live such a leisurely life, to enjoy distractions so intensely, to be a hopeless romantic. It was a luxury guys like me couldn't afford. The best course of action was to hide out here for a moment while the guards prowled the nearby streets. It gave me and the kid a chance to talk, and not about clowns who danced with masks on. Masashi Hashimoto, you and I have much to discuss. This was the first time I had ever addressed him so officially. Names hold a certain kind of power, but only if you used them sparingly. Like a spice, they can change the flavor of a sentence entirely, and this dish was tasting bitter, but this matter had to be addressed. I'm your bodyguard. You tried running out on me while I slept. Why? My eyes met his and prepared for a stare down, but that wasn't necessary. His eyes looked away towards the front entrance as if willing the body to follow. Why was he so desperate to avoid this question? Masashi's hands clenched into fists.
Worried that I would abscond on your payment? Of course. That's all you ever seem to care about.
He pulled out a pouch from inside his kimono and slammed it against the stage floor. The jingling of coins preceded a scatter of ryo, the shining glints of gold unmistakable even in this faint light.
There, take your Ryo, you scoundrel!
The Shugenja turned away from me with shoulders that raised with rapid breaths. He sniffed the air, though not to catch a scent. Masashi was holding back a cry, and it was entirely my fault. We need to be able to trust each other. Sneaking off in the middle of the night was not a sign of trust. If I was going to do what Masashi hired me to do, he'd have to trust me. But could I really blame him if he didn't? I didn't exactly come across as credible or dependable, but underneath this rough Ronin exterior, I was a professional, at killing or otherwise. Masashi didn't reply, so I continued. Hyuga is a more dangerous place than you know. Even in the Imperial City there are those who'd love to get their hands on a Shugenja bearing your family name. You need my protection, not my friendship. That last word came out weirdly, but that's because it was a weird word to begin with. I knew what friends were. I just couldn't remember the last time I had any. This time the young man in the red kimono did reply, though with his back still turned.
You declare it a necessity that we trust each other, but after these past 2 weeks I scarcely even know your name.
Masashi spun on his heels to face me, with his anger more composed than before.
How can I permit you as my protector if you won't even tell me who you really are?
Who I really was? I was exactly what you think, a no-good, vagrant swordsman for hire. Or maybe he wanted to know about my past as a street urchin who stole from hard-working farmhands, who beat up on the smaller kids until they bruised all over just for a fistful of stale rice. Or maybe he wanted to know about the ungrateful student of a sympathetic samurai who betrayed his master for a bit of chump change. Forsaking the man who was the closest thing to a father he would ever have. What a horrible human being. My life made for a piss-poor story no kabuki house wanted to dance to. Masashi had the curious mind of any good scholar, but this was one tale he wouldn't want to hear. And aside from that, he'd never see his apricot Ronin the same way again.